Hi, I'm Mary Mamaliti, and you're listening to the Kitchen Confession Podcast. I'm a food blogger with a passion for cooking, and empowering others is what drives me. Here are a few things you may not know about me. I'm legally blind. I have retinitis pigmentosa, a degenerative eye disease. I smile all the time. To me, cooking is about people, and food brings people together. So join me in the kitchen, and let's get cooking. Today, I'll be talking with Fay Knights. Hi, Fay.
Hi.
Welcome. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Fay.
I'm a wellness blogger by heart, so I love posting blogs on food, nutrition, and health. And full-time, I'm a marketing and communications coordinator, and I'm also legally blind. I went blind about 10 years ago from a very rare eye disease called Leber's Hereditary Optic Neuropathy, LHON for short.
Mm-hmm. And with Leber's, do you have central or peripheral vision?
I have central vision loss, which means I use my peripheral vision to see.
Okay. And this is a food podcast, so we're going to talk a little bit about food.
Yes, I love food.
And yourself and about the kitchen. So what is it about cooking that you do that you enjoy?
Yeah, I love just getting my hands into food and using all of my senses to really create a meal that smells and tastes fantastic. I also found food a form of therapy for me. Mm-hmm. So when I lost my vision about 10 years ago, I thought that I wouldn't be able to do things in the kitchen anymore. And growing up, I always loved making meals with my family, especially my mom. I come from a Mediterranean Greek background, so there's food everywhere pretty much. And losing my central vision, it kind of scared me. I thought, how am I going to cut things? How am I going to chop things? How am I going to boil things? How am I going to use a stove and all that sort of stuff? So I put fear aside. I build the confidence to learn how to use these tools properly and safely with the support of rehab facilitators and so forth. And pretty much got back in the kitchen with confidence to see what I could do. And through trial and error, mm-hmm. I learned how to use these things, learned how to use them well, although it did take me a little bit longer than expected, but that's okay. Patience was there. And so I basically started making those meals again, and it became a form of therapy. Anytime I thought that I couldn't do something, I reminded myself on how I got there, mm-hmm. and how I was able to get back in the kitchen and make some of my favorite meals and actually start cooking for other people too, which was fantastic because just seeing people's reactions and of loving the food that they were eating made me so unbelievably happy.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's a good thing that you meant they love the food. Did you ever have an experience where, so if you can describe an instance or a time when you cooked a meal and you had a great reaction from it, and then there was a time maybe that wasn't so great, that didn't go so well?
There's a number of meals that I can think of that always get a great reaction, but the one in particular is I make a fantastic rice pudding. Mm-hmm. It's dairy-free, so I use lots of coconut cream, which fantastic. Makes it super savory, lots of vanilla, lots of cinnamon. So not only is it tasty, but the aroma itself will just you could smell it from down the hall pretty mm-hmm. much. And every time I make it, I can feel my husband's eyes light up. I don't need to see them. I could feel them. I could feel that grin on his face. So definitely that's one of the meals there. And one that didn't turn out so well.
But you didn't quite get the reaction that you thought you were going to get.
Or the reaction.
For me, I mean, there was one meal. There were so many. I'm not even going to lie. There were so many as I'm going along. And I remember my husband, he took the first bite and he's like, okay, this is all right. And I'm like, you're lying. What's wrong with it? This is terrible. What'd you do? Did you drop a piece of plastic in it? What was it? So, I mean, and I've had that happen.
Yeah.
Was there anything you can think of that you've had?
For sure. I think it's inevitable. Like if you're making things in the kitchen, it's bound to happen. Mm-hmm. There's bound to be a meal or two or three that don't quite turn out the way you want, or maybe somebody else's taste buds doesn't like it either. So lately I've been experimenting with soups. Winter is long in Canada, so the more soups, the better. But I've been trying to perfect like creamy soups. But because I have a dairy allergy, it's hard to figure out the cream consistency without actually using butter or heavy cream and that sort of thing. So I've become a little bit of an expert in using coconut-based products and almond-based products. And recently, I made a vegetable soup, and I wanted to make it creamy. So I just dumped in whatever I thought would make it creamy. And I definitely did not get the reaction I thought I would, not even from myself. After I tried it, I was like, this is not as good as I anticipated it to be. It turned out quite watery. I didn't put enough potatoes. The carrots were not cooked long enough. So although the liquid consistency was there, the carrots were still crunchy, which is not supposed to happen in a soup. So for sure, that was one of my recent ones, but I've got many. I could be here all day.
So that leads me, are you the type of cook, because I'm the type where I do follow recipes, but I tend to wing it a lot. And that's why I enjoy cooking more than baking. I do bake, but I do enjoy cooking more because of that. I can get a little more creative. I don't have to really be as structured as baking. What would you consider yourself? More of a structured cook where you follow recipes, or?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think it depends on time for me. If I have to make something quickly on a Saturday morning because I have to prepare for like a lunch or dinner, I'm going to go to a recipe that I know will not fail me.
Right.
But if I have, the weekend or evening to experiment and have some fun and just use whatever ingredients I've got in the kitchen, I love that too. And actually, now that I think about it, I would say a lot of my recipes were developed from that, like just on the whim, seeing what's in my fridge, seeing what's in the cabinets, no time to go to the grocery store, got to use what you have. And then they turned out well. Maybe the second or third time they turned out well, but they worked. So definitely a little bit of both.
When you reintroduce yourself back into the kitchen, I mean, I know for myself, when my eyesight deteriorated and I went from cooking one way to completely not wanting to cook because I thought, there's no way I can do any of this. Was there anything, I mean, one of my inspirations to actually get back into the kitchen, I did use it for therapy, but I also remembered a chef, Christine Ha.
I know.
You know her
name.
well,
Yeah.
right? So she won, I think it was Top Chef. I think so. I can't remember. Master Chef. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
I watched that episode.
Clearly, I haven't
season
finished,
religiously.
Yeah. Clearly, I haven't finished my coffee yet. And she actually helped me realize that I can do this. And slowly, I got back into it, and I just started chopping a little slower. I just did things slightly different. Were there anything that you could remember that when you were going back into the kitchen after your vision deteriorated, that you did, or something that helped you get back in there, or that inspired you to get back in?
There's several things. I think Christine was one of them for sure. I think that season aired about 3 or 4 years after my vision loss. So that was encouraging for me to see at that point. But I had already gotten to that comfort level by the time I had watched that season. I was just really proud to see her on there doing so well, and that she was inspiring so many other people to do the same. But prior to that, I think the support that I received from my family, from my loved ones, my community was just phenomenal. They understood that I was going through something challenging. For me, my vision loss was overnight, which posed its own challenges
Right.
and stresses for sure. So I went from having 20/20 vision, or better than 20/20 actually, to within 24 hours being legally blind. So not only was I physically trying to adjust, I was mentally trying to adjust. I wasn't prepared. And my family knew that that was a struggle that I was going through. And if being in the kitchen and making tasty food was something that was going to make me happy, they were going to do anything they could to encourage me.
To support that.
To support that as well. Even just through language, through positive comments that they would make. They'd see me struggle. They'd see me cooking and being frustrated. And I remember distinctly my mom coming up to me saying, "What's the worst that could happen? You know, like, what's the worst that could happen? Just keep going. Like, who cares if it doesn't taste good? We're all going to eat it anyway.
That's exactly it. That's key. And that's what I kept on repeating to myself was, what's the worst that could happen? I can always fix it.
Yeah.
I can always move on from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
That really helped for sure.
Is there a funny moment that you can remember that's happened to you in the kitchen? Or the funniest thing that's ever happened while you've been cooking, during a meal, anything? Can you think of anything? I mean, I thought about this question myself. And I know there's been many, but I couldn't really narrow it down to one thing. Other than, and I think I mentioned this before in a different segment, was that I actually accidentally went to go make turkey soup. And somehow, someway, couldn't even blame it on my eyes. The scissors that I was cutting up the carcass with went into the pot, and I cooked the entire thing.
Wow.
For hours. Yeah. Yeah. So anything you can think of that?
These little things happen often, whether I mix the salt and the sugar or the baking powder and the baking soda or the lemon juice and the who knows what. Like, I mix things up all the time. My husband's used to tasting things with new flavors in them. A kitchen occurrence, I think I always come back to this one because it helped me build a memory, and it was quite early on in my stage of vision loss. I had purchased one of those KitchenAid blenders, KitchenAid mixer. And it was a big investment for me at the time. And I thought I was going to use it like every day, and it was going to be this magnificent thing. And I was going to learn how to do this and like use all the tools and everything. And my mom and I were set to make traditional sweet bread because my background's Greek, and we celebrate Easter on a high level with a lot of food and a lot of sweet bread. So my mom had come over. I had convinced her that we were going to use this KitchenAid mixer, although, you know, she was always telling me it's better to make bread with hand. But long story short, we started making it, and because at the time I had never used the mixer before, and my mom had never used a mixer before, we just started dumping in the ingredients. And when it came time to dump in the flour, the whole kitchen just lit up with flour. Flour was everywhere because we had the bread hook on high, and the ingredients that were currently in were eggs and liquid. So when the two combined, it just poof, there was flour everywhere. And I could just remember us, like, I was literally covered from head to toe in flour. The kitchen was covered. And I thought at the time, I was like, waiting for my mom's reaction. I was like, okay, it's going to go one of two ways. She's either going to be like, I told you so, or she's going to like laugh her head off. And of course, we both just laughed our heads off, and we're cleaning probably longer than it took us to actually make the bread itself.
So did that KitchenAid stand mixer ever make an appearance again?
It got tucked away in a cabinet very in the far back. I probably only pulled it out a few times after that, but I've been hesitant ever since.
That's a crash course on what not to do with the KitchenAid stand mixer.
Exactly.
So I always like to actually have a few little tips for the kitchen, and I like sharing them with people, and I like hearing about theirs, because then it just kind of gets me more familiarized with things that I should be doing in the kitchen that'll help me along. So when it comes to tips and tricks in the kitchen, is there anything that you use or you do to help you have a more seamless cooking experience, I like to say? So some people, I like to use the frying pan example all the time, because some people, rather than using a frying pan, they like to use a pan that's slightly higher on the edges. So even not exactly a stock pot, but that one in between. So this way it'll catch any splatter that happens, and you're still frying in it, but it'll just catch everything for you. Anything you do that chopping, pouring, spices?
Yeah. So I find that when it comes to tips that somebody who's visually impaired may use may differ than the average Joe's kitchen tips. So I have a few neat little tips that I've kept up my sleeve that help me in the kitchen being visually impaired. one of the first things I learned is safety is so important. Like safety trumps everything.
Oh, absolutely.
So I actually have a clear pair of construction glasses, the ones like drywallers use or painters use. And if I'm frying anything, if I know there's going to be oil splatters because I'm nearsighted, I have a tendency to get closer to items than I actually think I am. So if I feel like I'm a foot away, I'm actually maybe like 8 inches away.
Okay.
And to that makes me nervous. Knowing that I do that makes me nervous. So I use those clear plastic construction glasses.
I love that idea.
Yeah, when I'm frying anything or when I'm sautéing or anything on high temperature that has oil or waters that might splatter. Yeah, because there's no way I want any of that coming into my eyes. So for sure, that's one of the safety tips that I use and I recommend for people that are nervous. That took the nerves away for sure when I started doing that. Another tip would be when it comes to cutting boards, there's a few really great brands out there. I don't remember the names, but they have rubber underneath the board.
KitchenAid has one.
Okay, yeah, I got a wood one. I think it was from HomeSense or Winners or something. And it's a wood block and it's got like rubber legs underneath. And it is the best thing ever. That way when I'm chopping or cutting things, the board's not slipping and sliding all over the place. And for me, that's another really good safety tip because if I'm cutting and the board's slipping and I don't see where I'm about to cut next because I'm very tactile, there goes a finger.
It's true.
We don't want that happening.
That's why stabilizing your cutting board is key. I mean, if you're a DIYer and you like to do your own thing, what I've done is I've taken just a regular cutting board.
Yeah.
And I purchased, there's this shelf lining paper.
Yeah.
That it doesn't necessarily stick to your shelf, but it's almost like a rubber texture or something that you put underneath your rug.
Okay.
That non-slip piece.
Yeah.
You can just cut it the size of the cutting board, glue it onto the back.
Yeah.
And it'll stick to you.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love that tip. I'm gonna do that this weekend.
Michael's. You're making a trip to Michael's.
Yeah. Or Amazon. Even more stuff on Amazon too these days. I can't believe it. They've got so much kitchen stuff. And another tip that I use as well is if I'm boiling or making anything in a pot, I go a size up. Because there's a tendency if something's boiling too long or especially with pasta, I find, it could just overflow. So I always go a size up and that ensures that if it's going to be boiling on high for a long period of time, it's not going to spill and then get onto the stove. So that's another tip that I would probably recommend as well. Again, for us folk who are visually impaired, bump dots, I'm not sure if anybody's heard of those, but bump dots save me in the kitchen all the time. I've put bump dots on my stove. Actually, we purchased a stove about 2 years ago, and it had built-in, I had never seen this before, but it had like built-in grooves around the temperature gauges. And I was sold. I was like, all right, we're buying this. But the old one that we had bump dots all over the place because I wanted to make sure where high was, medium high,
So
low.
For someone who doesn't know what a bump dot is, can you explain just a little bit about it?
Definitely. So bump dots are like little stickers that can peel off, and they're circular. And when you graze your hand over it, you could feel that there's like a little circle dot there. They're extremely tiny. They're maybe the size of like a tiny little stud earring or something like that. And you can place as many as you want, anywhere you want. And they stick for quite a while. As long as you don't fidget with them, they could stick on whatever you put them on for like a year or so. And I would use them to determine temperatures. So for example, if it was high, I'd put 1 bump dot. If it was low, I'd put 3. And if it was medium, I'd put 2. So then I kind of knew where I was in the temperature gauge.
So you can purchase them anywhere.
Yeah, C&IB has a great selection as well because they have them in different sizes.
Yes.
So depending on where you're using them, you could buy like a small bump dot set or a medium or large or extra large. So I find the small ones help me, but it's great to have that option.
It is. I like that tip. how about when you're cutting? Do you tend to use more of a chef's knife or a paring knife? What are you more comfortable with when you're chopping?
At home, I have a knife chopping block set. So it comes with, I believe, 6 or 7 different knives. And when I first purchased this, I was really intimidated. I was like, which knife should I use first? How do I use it? And it's funny because I actually went on YouTube and I started Googling Gordon Ramsay knife tips and tricks, because at that point I really didn't know how to use any of these knives. I wasn't an expert. I'm just like a home taught cook. So I figured, how do I do this without having to spend so much money on workshops? And how do I do this in a way that it's going to be safe for me, knowing that I have vision loss? So I watched a few YouTube videos. I actually got my husband to stay with me in the kitchen the first time I was using the set and like teaching myself to use it, to ensure that I was holding the knives properly, because a lot of the bigger knives, I have super tiny hands, and a lot of the bigger knives were really hard for me to hold and teach myself how to hold. So him being there, or even anybody being there, reassured me the first time around I wasn't going to totally mess things up. And then after a few times, I kind of just got the hang of it. But the best tip I would say is just take your time. If you rush chopping whatever you're going to chop, you're bound to hurt yourself. So take your time, be patient, feel the grooves. Does it feel good in your hand? Is the knife too heavy, too light? Like, it should feel good while you're holding it. And be patient, especially the first time using a new knife. It's always the scariest. So just take your time, feel for the grooves, and use a knife that's appropriate for what you're going to do. So there's bread knives, there's chopping knives. I can't express how helpful it is to invest in knives that support what you're going to be making. It makes a world of a difference, cutting bread with a bread knife.
Right. And sharp knives. Definitely sharp knives. One last tip I wanted to find out. Do you have anything or any type of technique that you use when you're checking to see if, let's say, your roasted vegetables are done, are ready? What tips do you have, or what do you use in order to determine when your food is ready to be either taken off the stove, out of the oven, ready to eat?
Yeah, that's one of the trickiest things. And it's one of the most common things I'm asked too, even just by family and friends when they come over. They're like, Faye, how did you know when this was going to be ready? And the trick is, the more often you make something, the more you'll learn on like how long it'll take. So for example, the first time I made a roasted like veggie casserole, I took it out after like 25 minutes and nothing was cooked.
So timing.
I taste tested it. It's a little bit more nerve-wracking with meat. You might want to Google like weight versus time and temperature. I find that Google really helps when it comes to that. But with veggies and that sort of stuff, I just poke at it, try it. If it's not ready yet, I put it back in. But it's a lot of trial and error. Even for people without vision loss, it's trial and error for them too. Like, some things you can't see visually. It's all about the taste factor.
It's true. But a lot of recipes do say, cook this until browned.
Yeah.
For us, or at least what I've noticed, is that you either have to have the exact timing on it, down to a T, or by smell. Especially
when it comes to baking. I find that I was actually making a chocolate chip banana loaf the other day, and the recipe said 40 minutes, so I took it out, and it was completely raw. And it had also mentioned until golden, but obviously it's hard for me to see golden.
Exactly.
So I took it out at the 40 minutes, and my oven might be different than the person that developed the recipe. So I'm not sure if I would recommend this, but after I let it cool down for about 5-10 minutes, I actually tap it. I tap it with my fingernail to see if a crust has formed. Because a lot of times in baking, there's a layer that forms when the bread or cake or muffin, whatever you're making, rises. And there's a distinct sound and texture that you can always look for to see if it's ready.
The sound, is it more like a hollow, or is it more like a tapping? Like if you're tapping a nail on the counter.
Yeah, it depends on what you're making. I would say for a nice fluffy cake, it's a little bit hollow sounding. If you're making a more of like a dense muffin or a dense cake, it would be a little bit more solid. So you feel things out and use your senses. That's the number one tip I would use. I would recommend. Just use your senses. All of them.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, Faye, now we're going to play a couple of games. First one is called This or That. How it works, I'll read 2 words, and then you can choose which one of the two items you prefer.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Ready? Okay. Toast or eggs?
Toast.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
What's worse, laundry or dishes?
Oh, goodness. Dishes.
Pancake or waffle?
That's a really hard one because I'm a breakfast fiend. Pancakes.
Yes. I would definitely choose that as well. Fruits or vegetables?
Fruits.
Frozen yogurt or ice cream?
Dairy-free ice cream.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Soup or sandwich?
Soup.
Out for dinner or do you prefer delivery? Eating in.
Saturday night out for dinner, Friday night eating in.
Okay, so both for Faye. Mashed potatoes or baked potatoes?
Baked potatoes.
Blue cheese or ranch dip?
Ranch dip.
Yes,
Yeah,
Faye.
yeah.
We are on the same page. Jamie Oliver or Bobby Flay?
Jamie Oliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loving this. I love them both. It's hard for me to choose.
I know, it's so hard.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Wine or beer?
Neither. I don't drink alcohol.
Good. That's good. My hero. Bacon or sausage?
Turkey, bacon, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Baking or cooking?
That's a really tough one. I don't think I could choose that. I don't know.
You love them both equally?
Maybe baking.
Baking? Okay. When you wash your dishes, do you put soap on the sponge or do you soak your dishes in soapy water?
Soap on the sponge, soap all over the dishes, and then the water comes.
Iron Chef or chopped?
Iron Chef.
Parsley or cilantro?
Parsley.
No, this one's
Italian parsley.
Italian parsley.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next one's a tough one.
Okay.
So hear this one through. When you peel a banana,
Yeah.
do you open it from the top where the stem is or the bottom?
I open it from the top, but I've heard so many tips on opening it from the bottom, so I feel like I should start doing that. But I do open it from the top.
Had several discussions on this. It's a split. Do you eat snack or no snacks?
10 snacks a day.
So snacks it is.
I'm like a snack monster. If anybody follows me on Instagram, that's all I do is sharing my snacks. Yeah.
All right, the next game is rapid fire.
Nice.
I'm going to begin by asking you a series of questions.
Okay.
And you can just answer each one as quickly as possible.
Okay.
All right. First question. What is your favorite food?
Berries.
Do you like spicy food?
Yes.
What's the spiciest thing you've ever eaten?
I think it was like a curry entree from a restaurant, but they had put way too much chili in it, and I felt like my chest was on fire after I ate it.
And it's not like you can have milk to temper that.
No, you can't. I was asking for breadsticks, pita bread, whatever they had.
What foods do you absolutely hate?
Mushrooms.
What food do you know you shouldn't eat, but you do? You sneak that in.
I don't even know. I shouldn't eat. Okay, so once in a while, so I have a dairy allergy, like I had mentioned before, but once in a while I crave a croissant. I really do. And I know they're made with lots and lots of butter, but I'll sneak it in once in a while. I deal with the aftermath later.
Because they're so good.
They're so good. Just the texture, the fluffiness. Oh my gosh.
And then that crispy outside. I got to go get myself a croissant now.
Have one for me too.
What's your favorite meal to make?
I just love a hearty vegetable soup.
What's your favorite ingredient to cook with?
I love using vanilla.
What's your favorite kitchen gadget?
I love a good saucepan.
What's your favorite meal of the day?
Breakfast.
And why?
All the fruit. I'm a fruit addict. Again, if anybody follows me on social media, I would say that a good 75% of my pictures are fruit related. I just absolutely love fruit, and I find that fruit is really refreshing and hydrating to have in the morning. So I would definitely have to say breakfast.
Now, I almost don't want to ask this question because I've seen your Instagram account. But what's your favorite junk food?
Junk food, I would have to say, is like chicken wings. We went out for a recent Maple Leafs hockey game last week, and everybody was ordering chicken wings around me, and I hadn't had chicken wings in a while, and I went to town, and I got like every sauce you could think of, honey garlic, barbecue, mild, spicy, you name it. I was trying them all, and then at the end of it, I ordered my own as well. But it was, I would have to say chicken wings.
I'm the one where, I can only have a few, honestly. And then 5 minutes in, I've got my own order. I'm eating my husband's. It's a bad scene.
Oh, and French fries. Yeah, that's another one too. You just reminded me when you're trying your husband's. My hubby will always order French fries, and he'll be like, "Do you want to order as well?" "No, it's okay. I'll just have one of yours." Half an hour later, he's like, "Thanks, Fay. You've eaten half my fries."
All right, and the last game we're going to play is true or false. All right, I'm going to read a couple of statements, and then you tell me if you think it's true or false.
Okay.
First one. Green olives are just unripened black olives.
True.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. You got that.
That's the Greek.
That's my correct answer sound. The color of an olive is related to how ripe it was when picked.
True.
Okay. Next question. Dog food gets tested by humans.
False.
True.
Ooh.
There is actually a job for dog food testing.
That's amazing. I might have to look into that. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that ensures that our all the doggies in the world are getting good quality food.
True. I didn't look at it that way. I just went right to the it's so wrong. So next question. Potatoes are 80% water.
True.
Yes.
Yeah.
Only about 20% of a potato is solid.
Wow.
20%. You are killing this.
Wow.
Okay, next question. Apples float because their skin is highly water repellent.
True.
False.
Okay.
It's false. Apples float because 25% of their volume is air.
Yeah, that makes sense. For sure. Yeah.
Baking soda will last forever.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
When stored in a cool, dry place, it can last for decades.
Yeah. Mine's always in the fridge. From the time I open it, it goes right into the fridge. Not that I'm going to have it around for very long because I cook way too much or bake way too much, but yeah, it keeps it nice and fresh.
Excellent. That's all we have for our games. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This has been so much fun.
Yeah, this was wonderful. We have to do this again.
Definitely.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If people want to reach you, get in contact with you, follow you along on social media, where can they find you?
Definitely. So my blog is www.wellnessfirst.net. So Wellness First is with one and then the st.net. And then on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you can find me at wellnessfirst_net.
Excellent. Thanks again, Fay.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Kitchen Confession podcast. For recipes and foodie finds, head over to kitchenconfession.com. I also want to thank our producer, Wilson Lynn, and remind you to join us next week for more guest kitchen confessions. See you at the next episode.